Welcome to the Part S channel. Today we explain Deuteronomy chapter 30 in a clear and simple way, step by step. We're going to really take our time here, walking through this fascinating text deliberately. We'll be looking very closely at what it actually says and exploring the incredibly profound logic embedded right there within its verses. Now, to really grasp the weight of this chapter, you got to know exactly where we are in the story. The setting is absolutely critical. Moses is standing with the Israelites on the plains of Moab. They're literally right on the edge of the Promised Land, just moments before they're scheduled to cross the Jordan River. And here's the kicker. Moses isn't going with them. So this right here, this is his final impassioned address. He is presenting them with intense, massive choices about their future, laying out exactly what will happen based on the paths they choose.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for the chapter, and we'll cover every part in strict chronological order. First, return and restoration. Second, the word is near. Third, choosing life or death. Then, we'll pull out key ideas and lessons and finish up with a final recap.
Starting with Section 1, Return and Restoration. This covers verses 1 through 10. Prepare yourselves to look at the plain, literal meaning of Moses' prophetic warning, as well as his incredible promise.
So Moses starts off speaking prophetically here. The chapter actually opens with this stark acknowledgement that the Israelites will eventually face exile among the nations. But look at what Moses says next. When you and your children return to the Lord your God and obey him, then the Lord your God will restore your fortunes. You see, Moses is addressing the what and the why. What happens when they get dispersed, and why exactly does God restore them? Well, the text is explicit. The act of the people returning to God with their obedience is the direct trigger for his compassion and their restoration.
If you look at the logic right here on the screen, you can see the strict, logical cause and effect outlined in the first 3 verses. It's a remarkably simple progression. Step 1, the historical realities of the blessings and curses actually occur, and the people are scattered. Step 2, the people experience a complete shift in mindset. They take it to heart, and they return to God. And then, Step 3, God actively responds by having compassion, gathering them, and restoring them. The sequence is absolute.
And the text emphasizes just how expansive this gathering will be. Verse 4 says, "Even if you have been banished to the most distant land under the heavens, from there the Lord your God will gather you." I really want to emphasize the physical geography mentioned here. Moses is clarifying that God's promise of gathering his people, it isn't limited by borders or oceans. It applies completely, no matter how incredibly far away they've been scattered across the earth.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the text transitions from a physical return to a deep internal spiritual change in verse 6. Moses uses a very specific Hebrew metaphor here. God will circumcise your heart. In simple English, keeping strictly to the plain, literal meaning of the text, this just means to remove any barriers of stubbornness. It's an act of purifying one's devotion so that you can love the Lord with absolutely all your heart and soul, and the stated purpose of this pure devotion, so that you may live. Verses 9 and 10 conclude this first section by detailing exactly what this restoration looks like in real life. God's delight returns to the people in highly practical, tangible ways. The text literally lists them out. He'll make them prosperous in the work of their hands, the fruit of the womb, the young of their livestock, and the crops of their land. We're talking about a complete physical and agricultural renewal in the land of their ancestors. But it's contingent entirely on their obedience to the commands written in the book of the law. Moving right along to Section 2, the word is near, covering verses 11 through 14. Moses anticipates an excuse here from the Israelites regarding just how difficult God's commands might be.
Remember, Moses has just laid out some massive requirements: pure devotion, total obedience. Anticipating that the Israelites might find it all just a bit too difficult, he cuts that excuse off immediately in verse 11. He says, "Now what I am commanding you today is not too difficult for you or beyond your reach." Let that sink in for a second. Moses is making it crystal clear that the law, these instructions for life, is not some impossible abstract puzzle reserved only for scholars or angels. It is meant for every single person standing there. And this brilliantly illustrates the contrast Moses sets up in verses 12 and 13. He uses physical metaphors to explain accessibility. He says the law is not up in heaven, so you don't need someone to fly up into the sky to get it for you. It's not beyond the sea, so you don't need someone to sail across the ocean to retrieve it. It doesn't require some mythical, heroic journey to attain. Instead, it's fully accessible.
Moses drops the ultimate bottom line in verse 14. "No, the word is very near you. It is in your mouth and in your heart, so that you may obey it."
He reinforces this beautifully simple idea that the ability to do what is right, to follow the law, already resides within the individual. It's right there in their speech, their mouth, and in their inner conviction, their heart. It is entirely within their power to do it right now.
All right, section 3, choosing life or death, found in verses 15 through 20. And as we enter this climactic final section, you can feel the immense gravity of the choice Moses is presenting.
Verse 15 hits literally like a hammer. See, I set before you today life and prosperity, death and destruction. This right here is the ultimate bottom line of the entire chapter and honestly, arguably the entire book of Deuteronomy. Moses reduces everything down to a stark, binary choice. There is no middle ground presented in the text whatsoever.
According to verses 16 through 18, the text strictly correlates specific actions with specific consequences. What actually leads to life and prosperity? The text says it's loving God, walking in His ways, and keeping His commands. Conversely, what leads to death and destruction? It's when a person's heart turns away and they are drawn away to bow down and worship other gods. We aren't taking sides here, we are just looking directly at the source text, and the source establishes an absolute rule of cause and effect, based entirely on the Israelites' own actions.
Moses gets incredibly specific with his warning in verses 17 and 18. If their hearts turn away to foreign idols, the text warns they will certainly be destroyed. And practically speaking, what does that destruction look like? Well, the text defines it as not living long in the land they are crossing the Jordan to possess. Their hold on the promised land is entirely dependent on their exclusive loyalty to God.
Because this choice is so momentous, Moses actually calls witnesses in verse 19. But who is witnessing this covenant? He says, "This day I call heaven and earth as witnesses against you." He's calling upon the eternal, permanent elements of nature to stand there and testify to the fact that He has clearly, undeniably given Israel this choice between life and death, blessings and curses. So how do they practically choose life? Verse 20 defines it in 3 clear steps. Step 1, love the Lord your God. Step 2, listen to His voice. Step 3, hold fast to Him. The text frames these relational actions as the very definition of life itself. Doing this ensures they will dwell securely in the land sworn to their ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Let's move to and see how this builds in section 4, key ideas and lessons. Now that we have walked step by step through the text, here are the main literal ideas we've uncovered. First, the incredible promise of God's compassion, that no matter how far the exiles goes, a return of the heart triggers a physical gathering. Second, the idea that the law is not an impossible burden. It's highly practical, residing right there in your mouth and in your heart. And third, the undeniable reality of ultimate free will. Moses' entire argument is perfectly structured on the premise that the Israelites possess the absolute freedom to choose their own path.
So, why does this matter for us today? What should you take away from this ancient text for personal self-improvement? First, it teaches that it is absolutely never too late to return. Sincere repentance is always met with restoration. Second, do not overcomplicate what is expected of you. Doing the right thing is closer and far more accessible than you think. And finally, every single day is an active choice between life and ruin, based strictly on the actions we take and the loyalties we hold.
All right, we are wrapping up this explainer. Here is section 5, our final recap.
Let's trace the narrative arc of the chapter one last time. It starts by acknowledging the consequences of exile, then pivots beautifully on a return of the heart, which leads directly to restoration. Moses then proves the law is near and accessible, culminated in the ultimate gift, free will. So the ancient text leaves us with a provocative question for our own modern lives. If the power to choose life is already in your mouth and in your heart today, what path will you choose tomorrow?
Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.